This is probably one of the top 3 most important factors in building a multi-million-dollar company. But this is also the most overlooked pitfall that bankrupts idealistic CEOs. Stop trying to compete fairly. This will give you an unfair advantage. At every key point in your business structure, you have to have a choke point. When Apple suddenly built the iPod, why couldn't Sony, who happened to be the richest kid on the block, make a competing iPod? When Apple first came out with the iPhone, why couldn't Motorola, Ericsson, or Nokia come out with something better or even similar? It's because Steve Jobs made sure that Apple had multiple choke points. If you don't have multiple choke points in your business model, then competitors who are smarter than you, have more experience than you, and have more money than you. Oh, and have more employees than you, that are smarter than your own employees, will immediately leapfrog you. No matter what you're selling, how you're making what you're selling, and how you're marketing what you're selling, you need to make sure that your competitors can't just copy you. When Steve Jobs made the iPod, he took out multiple patents for rotary scroll wheels and touch sensors. He patented all the easiest ways to make the highest quality scroll wheels and touch sensors. So if you're a competitor and you wanted to copy him, you would have to engineer a much harder way to manufacture the same quality inputs, or you would have to manufacture much lower quality inputs. Doing both would take extraordinary amounts of time and money. Then he went about manufacturing the actual machines that would manufacture his iPods, and he took out patents on manufacturing processes. This means that if you wanted to make something similar to an iPod, you would actually have to make more expensive machines to manufacture your more expensive iPod clones. He did the same thing with iPhones, but this time he made a decade-long exclusivity contract with Foxconn. If you're going to revolutionize the omelette and make it absolutely stellar, you're going to have to patent the ingredients that go into the omelette. Then you're going to have to patent a brand new type of spatula and the brand new type of frying pan. That's what Steve Jobs did. I'll give you a simpler example of a choke point. Walter Manford was independently wealthy. His wife was a Hollywood starlet from the 70s. Nobody knew how he made his money because all he did was spend his days in philanthropic activities. One day, he invited the single-parent family boys from church to his home for lunch. The boys noticed that Mr. Manford's sons were missing. They were like older brothers to the boys. One of the boys was more curious than the others about what Mr. Manford did for work. When they were both alone in the kitchen, he asked. Mr. Manford simply smiled and asked him to help carry out more plates of food. When it was time to go home, Mr. Manford asked the curious boy to stay behind and help clean up. The curious boy agreed. Soon enough, he began to see Mr. Manford's sons come home 2 at a time, both holding one big satchel filled with sloshing quarters. Then another son and one of the cousins came in closely behind them with another satchel filled with sloshing quarters. This repeated until 7 satchels and 14 sons and nephews all came home. The curious boy loved playing video games for 25 cents, so he knew the sound of sloshing quarters all too well. He asked how he got so many quarters. Mr. Manford finally explained what he did for work. He said that 20 years ago he wanted to start a business, but he wanted to start a business that didn't require him to work, and he also didn't want any employees. He thought about opening laundromats, but he said there was no way to control whether a competitor would open the laundromat across the street or even one building over, and that laundromats were a problem because someone could go in and steal all the money when no one was looking. So he decided that he wanted to start a business with no employees that didn't require him to work in plain, open sight to discourage thieves. He decided to start a vending machine business. He would sell soda pop and chocolate bars. So while this checks most of the boxes, it still doesn't prevent competitors from opening up right next to him. Then he had a brilliant idea. He would lease the land under his vending machines from a large landowner and signed an exclusivity agreement for the entire property. This is easy to do when someone owns a large property and you just want a small 9 square feet of space in a corner he's not going to use. And it's especially easy to do when there's no demand for space in that corner. This is where Mr. Manford had a stroke of genius. He decided to position his vending machines near brand-new supermarkets, and he promised the supermarket owners that he would charge double what they charge in store. So the supermarket owners had no reason to turn him down. The curious boy was not only curious, he was also smart. He asked Mr. Manford, "Then why wouldn't someone just go in the store and buy the soda and chocolate? And why would you choose that location right in front of a store that sold what you sell for half price?" This is the question Mr. Manford was hoping the curious boy would ask. This was the era when beepers or pagers were first taking the world by storm. Every businessman, every salesperson, every delivery person, and all the cool kids in school had to have a beeper. The way beepers work, you just get the phone number of a person who wants you to call them back. Clever people came up with numeric codes like 1-177-155-400 for I miss you, 41705312 for hi, loser. Putting two and two together, he realized that if a new supermarket came into town, that would be a high traffic zone. Soon enough, there would be a freeway off-ramp and streets would get more lanes. And sure enough, there would have to be an island of payphones right in front of the supermarket. He leased 9 square feet of space exactly where the phone company would soon install a bank of payphones. The curious boy immediately asked how he knew where the phone company was going to put the phones. Mr. Manford whispered this part. The phone company gets hundreds of phone calls a day from people asking for phone booths to be installed here or there. There's one lady that gets all those messages and release them to the engineering team. I take really good care of her. She's one of the sisters in our church. It wasn't until years later that the curious boy realized he never got the answer to why people would pay twice as much to buy a candy bar and a Coke outside rather than going in the store. The curious boy himself had finally gotten a pager and ran to the line, queued up for the phone booth in front of a supermarket. This is part of an ongoing business mentorship series at futureview.app. Subscribe to this channel, then join our community at futureview.app to meet synergistic teammates. It takes a whole village to raise a CEO. I will also answer your questions personally.